Hello and welcome everybody to the next installment in my player analysis series. My name is Glitch and today I'm going to be analyzing the style of Grubby. Now I know a lot of my subscribers love Grubby and I love my subscribers, so I'm going to give it more Grubby. I'm going to do a Grubby PvT analysis. God, I have the most trouble figuring out the first letters of the races, I swear to God. But anyway, Grubby, this is actually a game that I cast recently. I actually just cast this a couple of days ago as part of a best of 7 series of Grubby versus TLO. So if you didn't see that already and you don't want to be spoiled for the whole best of 7, or for part of the best of 7, then go first watch that best of 7 series, then come back and watch this series. As I mentioned in my previous uploads, this is going to be part of my player analysis series where I am going to be very closely analyzing the style of one particular player. In this case, I wanted to analyze a style that Grubby used in one of his games against Liquid TLO, and that is the early Colossus style, where he uses very early Colossus that allow him the chance to expand against the bio-type armies of Terran early game. TLO, I'll tell you now, is going to be going for a bio style, so this is actually going to work out quite well for Grubby. Grubby is of course going to open standard. He's going to be chrono boosting out some of those probes. You want to get that early econ up as Protoss when you're going up against Terran. That is because Terrans have those mules, so you need to be up in those harvester counts. That means chrono boosting that Nexus. In the meantime, he's just going to be getting up a gateway. He's going to be throwing up his gas geyser. Again, the build order, just like in my previous days of casting, the build orders will be posted down below in the description for this video, so if you guys really want to check it out, please do. He's going to be scouting his opponent. He sees that there's no crazy aggression early going on, no 2 racks aggression, anything like that quite yet, so he's just going to be pulling back, and he's going to continue with his build. He's started mining gas now, and he's just now throwing down a cybernetics core. Standard, 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 beautifully and wonderfully standard for Dem Protoss players. And there goes down the gas geyser. So, this is a very, very common opening for Protoss. Very, very often you will see this, this gateway, gas, core, gas. This is a very common opening for Protoss. It lets you get a lot of decently early gas, and you don't sacrifice too many minerals, and you're still getting up your tech. Just because these two buildings take so long to produce, and they take so long to warp in, this allows you to build up a little bit of gas, and gets you a good amount of resources in the process. So, now these 2 core buildings are down for now, and we are going to actually see very shortly, he produced 1 Zealot out of that gateway, which is now moving across the field, and he is now going to be producing a Stalker. This is a pretty common opening for Protoss, because that early Zealot Stalker, if you get it out there quick enough, can actually deal a lot of damage if your opponent's not ready for it, and your opponent isn't microing his units well. That Zealot will take a lot of the damage from these Marines, as that Stalker will deal a lot of the damage to the Marines, and even when that Zealot goes down, that Stalker is still able to kite those Marines. So very early in the game, this Zealot-Stalker combination can do a lot of damage to those Terran players. Now, starting sentry production. Anytime you see early sentry production, why do we have early sentry production? So that we can start throwing down our other tech buildings. In this case, a robotics facility has just been started. That early gas means that we can get this early robotics facility down, as well as our warp gate research. In the meantime, there's some early pressure going on over here. Grubby's scouting into his opponent's base, figuring out exactly what his opponent is doing. Not important right now. If you want to work on your micro, yes, and microing that Zealot and that Stalker to get the absolute most amount of damage done with it, you can, and Grubby is actually going to lose this Stalker right now to this Hellion. But other than that, he is just going to be pulling back and continuing with his build. Now, a second gateway has just gone down. He is going to be chrono boosting that cybernetics core. That is just because of the threat of his opponent right now. He saw his opponent moving out across the map, so he's just going to be throwing down a few units right now just to try to deal with it. His second gateway is up. Observer now coming out. Why is this important? The Observer coming out right now is important because this allows him to get a good idea very early on of what his opponent's going to do. So what did we see? We saw him go for that early gateway, and then instantly throw down that early robotics facility, and then get that Observer right away. He wants to constantly be aware of what's going on the map, wants to be scouting his opponent, and wants to know exactly what composition his opponent is going for. Because if he's going to be going for those early Colossi, spoiler, he is going to be going for those early Colossi, then he needs to know that his opponent is going to be going fairly heavy on that bio. In the meantime, he knows his opponent did start to push out there a little bit, so he is going to be getting an Immortal. This is very good defense, especially if your opponent has a mix with Marauders in it. But in the meantime, he's just going to be warping in more units on his warp gates. Right now, morphing in more Stalkers because they are able to deal the damage. He got that early sentry to be able to start saving up some energy so that he can throw down force fields if he needs to force field his ramp. And now he's just going to be sitting in his base, placing his units in defensive positions in case there are any kind of drops coming, any threats to his mineral line. He has his Stalkers there. And where's his sentry? The sentry is actually... yeah, it's actually there with its Stalker too. So now he's going to be throwing down his expansion. Expansion goes down around the 50 food mark, so it's not a super fast expansion. But remember, he's got this observer at his opponent's base, so he knows when his opponent's expanding. He knows he feels relatively safe right now with the gateway group that he does have. He can always chrono boost his warp gates. Notice he's saving up a little bit of energy. Just because he's not feeling 100% safe, he doesn't have complete map vision right now, so he's saving up a little bit of energy while he expands, because if he needs to chrono boost these 2 warp gates, he does only have 2 warp gates. And now, as his Nexus comes up, he starts to throw down his robotics bay. 3 sentries being kept near the front. Why? Because if they start to come up that ramp, he needs to be able to force field it, cancel that Nexus, and be able to start producing a lot more units from those warp gates. So, as soon as this robotics bay comes in, you're going to see him start to throw down Colossus, as well as start to get that thermal lance upgrade, critically important for those Colossi. And so now he's going to be moving out. He feels like he's got a good unit composition, and he's going to be pushing out a little bit. And yeah, there's actually going to be some Banshee pressure coming in. Again, we don't care too much for that. He's going to try to catch some Hellions in those force fields, keeping units on the ramp to prevent those Hellions from running by. But most importantly, he is now getting a Colossus. We are at the 9-minute and 30-second mark. Already the first Colossus is being chrono boosted out. He wants that out quick in case there are any kind of bio pushes. So he is chrono boosting it to get it out quick. And as soon as he has the gas, I believe he's going to be getting that extended thermal lance. And he is now starting to throw down that 3rd gateway. So this is a very, very late 3rd gateway after the Nexus, after the robotics bay. He is now getting his 3rd gateway just now. Little bit of a drone transfer. Again, saving up energy on the Nexus. He wants to save some energy on the Nexus all the time to be able to chrono boost out these gateways if he needs to be able to. Right now, he's feeling like he's in a good place. He sees the army of his opponent with this observer, so what's he doing? He's just going to be chrono boosting his tech. He's going to be chrono boosting out more Colossi and getting that extended thermal lance chrono boosted out. In the meantime, constantly macroing out of these 2... Come on, Grubby, don't make me look like a fool here. Make some more stuff out of these. These are just sitting here. You should, in theory, be constantly producing out of these warp gates. And he will actually... Come on, Grubby, how long are you going to make me look like a fool? There's going to be some Banshee pressure down here, but these Stalkers are going to hold that off just splendidly. Another Colossi now coming out onto the field, and here comes a big scary looking push, but what's he going to do? He's going to throw down some force fields to stall for time. His Colossi now have that extended thermal lance. This early of a bio push can be held off with his Colossus. And those force fields prevented movement, restricted them into very narrow passageways, and then those... And again, keep in mind, those sentries got very, very early, so there were a lot of energy to throw down force fields on them. And now TLO has seen that Grubby has gotten those that Colossus up with the extended thermal lance and is now forced to pull back with that bio, because this Colossus